Hey, we got some very positive comments on my 2 hour marathon going through my box of treasures. And some people pointed out rightly that they didn't really have 2 hours to watch the whole thing. So we're going to break it up into bite-sized pieces. And I wanted to lead off with this thing, and we're just going to focus on one thing. This is a book. It's really a report that I wrote in 1991. I knew I'd written it, but I couldn't find it. And then we found it in our pile of archival junk. It's called Testing: The Key to Direct Marketing Profits. Second edition. Now, I don't know whether I was just joking with myself or what. So 1991, this is way pre-internet. So how did this book come to be? All right. So I came across, in fact, you know what? I'm going to walk across the room and show you the book. It must have been like 1990, and I was in a bookstore where I used to hang out pre-internet. I think it was more healthy actually to go to bookstores and libraries than to sit at a computer all day, but c'est la vie, that's where we are. Um, and they had San Francisco where I lived back then, phenomenal bookstores. There were three good bookstores within walking distance of my apartment, like short walk of my apartment. And we were not an unusual neighborhood, right? There were over 100,000 square feet of book retail space in Union Square alone, right? So anyway, so this was a bookstore called the Albatross 2. I don't think I ever went to the Albatross 1. And in the middle of the room, they had this big wooden bin with junk books that they were selling really cheap. So this is what I saw. And it wasn't quite in this condition, but it was getting really close to being in this condition. And it was a whopping $10, which seemed like a small fortune to me at the time. I had to really think about buying it or not. Yeah, I wasn't born rich. Um, so going through this book, my mind is being boggled, because it's story after story after story of basically, kitchen table, uh, rags to riches, few bucks parlayed into millions. One guy actually talks about starting something on his kitchen table and ramping it up to Fortune 500 size and selling out by the time he was 42. That caught my attention. So I splurged. I spent the $10. And as I went through this, I was introduced to people like Eugene Schwartz, like Richard Benson, like Maxwell Sackheim. Hopefully, these are all names you all know. These are names, if you're in the internet business and you know them, you most likely know them because of me. Long before my good friend Brian Kurtz republished Breakthrough Advertising and The Secrets of Direct Mail by Richard Benson, which everybody should be reading, both those books. I was trying to tell the internet marketing elite that, hey, there's a long tradition here and we can learn a lot from these guys. Of course, they didn't listen. But some of my students did. So anyway, this set me on the course. Every time I read a name, I went to the library because there was no Amazon, and I looked for books by the author, and I was really lucky. The Eugene Schwartz book, Breakthrough Advertising, was there. Um, the Maxwell Sackheim book, My First 60 Years in Advertising, were there. A surprising number of the books mentioned in this book, uh, Mail Order Know-How, were on the shelves of the San Francisco Public Library. Now, I'm going to tell you a sad but true story. I was lucky to have been able to put my hands on those books because uh, when I could go off on a political tirade here. Uh, will I with will I restrain myself? No, I will not. A guy named Willie Brown. If you're really savvy, you know that he was the boyfriend of Kamala Harris. She was 23, he was 53, and married. Decided that he became mayor of San Francisco, and he knew he needed a new scam. So new construction is always a great way to funnel off money. So they decided to build a brand new public library, which sounds great, except it had one third less shelf space than the original public library. So what did the owner, or not the owner, well, these guys act like they own public resources. What did the manager of the public library do? He sent in the dark of night, metaphorically speaking, but surreptitiously, he sent 1/3 of all the books in the San Francisco Public Library to the landfill. And if you think I'm making this up, look it up. It really happened. So anyway, those books, luckily for me, I was reading those books in 1990 and 1991 because when I went back, because I wanted to check them out, some of them out again, they were gone. I don't know what that story, that's a true story. And it was kind of a harbinger of bad things to come, quite frankly. Um, great resources being disposed of, public resources, which seems to be the theme of politics these days. And Willie Brown, boyfriend of Kamala Harris, you should also know he's the one that brought Nancy Pelosi, Dianne Feinstein, and Gavin Newsom into politics. He recruited them, trained them, launched them, and brought them along. So, and I was right there fighting this guy, by the way. If you go to brasscheck.com/stadium, brasscheck.com/stadium, you'll see that when he was mayor, I was one of the biggest thorns in his side. But anyway, let's get back to the real stuff that we want to talk about, which is this book. So I read everything I could get my hands on, right? And I didn't, like I always tell people, if you want to learn a subject, don't read a book, read shelves of books. And I was just mesmerized by what I was reading. Now, it turns out Richard Viguerie, who's considered one of the great political direct mail people of all time, he said he did the same thing. I met him, not too long ago, and he did the same thing. As soon as he discovered, in his case, direct mail. Well, for me, it was direct mail too, because there was no internet. Right, direct mail was the only game in town. That and lead generating space ads, right? Lead generation space ads. So that's what he did too. Once he realized the power of this thing, he asked his wife, because he was married, he had kids, he had to make a living and all this. He said, "Darling, could I just spend 1 year reading these books?" And she said yes, and the rest is history. Best decision she ever made. And that's what I did too. Just just dove in. I read everything. And if you do that, you'll appear to be very smart. You should really take advantage of books, guys. But here's the thing, two things. One, I had an opportunity to give a talk at a convention of mortgage investors, which is too complicated to describe what that means, but it was a market. People had money to spend to learn how to, do what they were doing better. So they went to the convention, they heard speakers. This is my first time at speaking at a business conference. Just never did it before. So I knew, hey, I better bring something to sell. So that motivated me to get in gear to put this together. Now, the other thing that motivated me to get in gear was I was fascinated with the idea of testing, because to me, that seems to be the essence of direct response, right? We don't guess, we know. We run two headlines, we see which one does better, we go with that headline. It seems simple, nobody does it. Now, you may not have a big enough sample size or a big enough market where you can actually do statistically valid testing. That's fine. But what you should know is, when you're getting advice, get it from people that have tested the advice, not from people that are just talking through their hats. Okay. That's why I love John Caples so much, right? If you don't know the John Caples book, I'll say it again, Tested Advertising, fourth edition or earlier. He tracked ads from 1929 through the 1980s. And he was a great ad writer himself. And he learned a whole lot from A/B split tests. Also, by the way, Google discovered A/B split testing in 2001, right? And they consider it the most important thing they ever integrated into their business approach, A/B split testing, right? And of course, the other basis of their fortune is the value of a click, right? So where would Google and Facebook and everybody else that sells clicks be without A/B split testing and the recognition that clicks had value, which, by the way, in the early days of the internet, not many people had those two understandings. And you're looking at one of them, and it was a handful. I mean, like 5 guys you could count who understood that. Anyway, there was no book on testing. Everybody would mention it in their book. There were references to it. It's all good, great, really helpful. But I personally just wanted a book just about testing. So I wrote it myself. And let's see, I don't have a table of contents, but I'll read some of the subheads. The truth about paid advertising. Before you spend 1 penny on advertising, ... I'm a direct marketer, aren't I? Question mark. Direct response, the only form of advertising that makes sense. What else do we have in here? Testing, plain and simple. How to test an ad before you run it. Write it, rest it, revise it, then run it. Audition every ad. The right way to ask people what they think. Ask a pro. Pre-testing your ad, a summary. Next, calculating the effectiveness of your ads. First things first. Keeping track of the results. So glad I wrote this thing. Guys, if you're ever wondering if you should write something or not, write it. Just turn the TV off, put down the remote control, put down the bong or whatever it is you're doing, and write it. 1 step or 2. How can you tell if your ads are making you money? Recording ad response through keying. Okay. Keep a detailed journal of your advertising activity. How to use classified ads for low-cost, high-efficiency tests. Other ways of testing ads in periodicals. How not to test. What's worth testing? By the way, there were no seminars for me to go to on how to do copywriting, you know. Luckily, there was Eugene Schwartz, there was Vic Schwab, right? There was Maxwell Sackheim, there was David Ogilvy. There was a lot of stuff you could learn, but there were no mentoring programs, you know. Selecting the right media, how to find the right magazines, how to find the right newspapers, how to find the right radio and television time, how to find the right mailing lists. How to test a mailing list. Testing your ads, a summary. Things worth testing include improving established programs, testing ideas for direct mail. How to make sure your direct mail test is statistically valid. That's where I get technical. I get mathematical there. And parting shots, right? So that's the book. If all goes well, this will be given away to everybody that attends the November 5th, 30th anniversary of the commercialization of the internet. And it's appropriate that this book be given out to everybody that shows up, because A/B split testing surely existed for decades, not forever, by the way. It's a 19th century invention. So maybe it's 100 well, now we're looking at 140 years old, something like that. So it's not like an ancient thing, you know, it's a modern invention. But there was no understanding of A/B split testing in the internet marketing community for the longest freaking time. And one of the first ones to figure it out was Google. And it took them until 2001. So it is very appropriate that this book be given to the smart people that have marked their calendars to show up on November 25th for our 30th anniversary of the commercialization of the internet. So I hope you found this interesting. Let me know if you do, because I have other things to do if you don't. If you let me know you like it, I'll do more of it.